Hey, hello, and welcome to What is This? This is Show and Tell. In fact, this is our second Show and Tell this week. I'm John Park, and we have now got the Wednesday evening Show and Tell, an hour long, and we have just started this half-hour long Show and Tell on Thursdays after my workshop live stream show. And we have up to about a half hour to show any cool projects that you've got in the works, that you've built, that you wanted to show off, that you wanted to maybe explore some ideas around something, some parts, tools, things that you're interested in getting feedback on. All of that is welcome here. We have, let me see, we've got one person queued up right now. We've got a blog post out, so hopefully some other people will come on. Otherwise, I'm going to make our good friend Todd Bott talk for about the remainder of these 27 minutes about what he's got to show and tell. So if you want to cut Todd off, you might have to bring something on. All right, so let's bring Todd in. Hey, Todd, how are you?
Hey, I don't know if I have 27 minutes of material.
So what have you got for us here today?
All right, so this state-of-the-art 15-pound laptop is an Atari ST. You can see that there. So when you open it up, it's got two latches. Let's see if I can open it up and look at this awesome trackball, because trackballs were cool in the 80s. And I'm not quite sure. It's got this button up here. Not quite sure. Maybe this is just a shock absorber for the trackball. But this is an Atari ST in a portable package. And I don't know if you ever heard of Atari STs before, but they were kind of the computer to get if you were doing MIDI. And so one of the cool things about this is, okay, so here's the floppy drive and the joystick ports, because it's an Atari, so of course it has games. On the other side, not much. But on the back, hardware MIDI ports. And this was supported like deep in the firmware of the computer, so everything could talk MIDI. And in fact, some of the early networking games were done with MIDI jacks, and you just ran a MIDI cable between you and your friend's computer, and you could play networked games, sort of like the way they do now. Oh man, these latches. So this has been sitting in my lab for about 15 years untouched. John Park made a comment about I should do something with an Atari ST, and I'm like, well, you know, I happen to have an Atari ST.
Yeah, I saw one come up, and I said, oh man, you got to get one of these and revive it. I did not expect you to say, well, I happen to have one sitting right here.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I first learned MIDI sequencing on a normal Atari ST, and I don't know, about 20 years ago, I'm like, oh, it'd be really cool to like re-get that program, because it was a program that no one has really created like since, and try to recreate it by having an actual working version to kind of crib from. But I don't know, now I'm afraid to turn it on, because I'm sure the capacitors are all super dead and it might just like explode if I were to plug it into power. Oh, no. But it certainly looks awesome.
It does look awesome. Now, is that what kind of screen was that? Was that monochrome or was it a color?
This I believe is a monochrome screen. Yeah, it's got a whole 20 meg hard drive, a hard drive. But yeah, it's like a 640 by 480 screen. It's got, I think, something like, it's an 8 megahertz 68,000 processor, and like I think maybe 4 megs of RAM. But you know, it's got hardware parallel ports, RS-232 MIDI ports.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Now it's basically, you know, I could put a Raspberry Pi in this and get like, you know, 100 times the compute power.
And none of the cool.
Yeah, and probably like 14 pounds lighter.
Yeah, it's funny, where I first saw mention of this today was on a Discord for Cyberdeck, people who are building cyberdecks. And then just now over in our Discord, Mr. Certainly said, ooh, this would make a great cyber deck. So there's definitely, if you're not familiar with cyber decks, people check them out. It's a whole thing of people making these sort of clunky DIY laptopy William Gibson-esque computers.
Yeah, I'm sure they're much lighter. I mean, this thing is a behemoth. It is just after so many years of getting used to modern laptops that weigh like on the order of 3 or 4 pounds. This thing is just incredible.
Fantastic. Yeah, I remember the music department in college had some Atari STs and some Next computers. Those were sort of the electronic music computers of the day. And I'd never heard of there being this portable version. Was it targeted at performers?
No, I think it was targeted at like business people or something. I don't know. The Atari was a very weird beast. Like one of the reasons why I liked it when it first came out, when I was in like whatever junior high or high school, was that the OS was in ROM, and so when you turned it on, it booted up immediately. Whereas the comparable computers at the time, like the Macs and the Amigas, you would have to boot off the floppy or whatever, and it would take like several seconds. And so this was just like turn it on and you're going, kind of like the way the old Apple IIs, when you turn them on and they would immediately have a little basic prompt. But this had a full GUI environment that was like in ROM, and that was amazing. Of course, you could never update it. Yeah.
And the operating system was what on these? Was it just called Atari ST operating?
It was called TOS. I forget what that stood for, but it was based on a windowing environment called GEM, GEM, whatever that was. Yeah, it's one of these things like forks off into the computer architecture world that has just kind of withered off. I'd love to turn it on, but not I got to go in there and like fix it up first, I think.
Christopher Kentrell, if it says it smokes, the world is watching.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel a little bit of I should care for it a little bit rather than just sacrifice it to the video gods.
Well, externally it looks like it's in beautiful shape, so I kind of dare you to get in there and start poking around the capacitors and see what the state of that is.
Yeah, and for some reason, the previous owner put Velcro on the entire bottom of it, which makes me think that this was used by a performer, because this would go perfect on one of those keyboard A stands that you saw so much in the 80s, where like there'd be like a whole bunch of computers lined up on a big A frame. But
yeah, for sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, it meant getting it out of its little case was a challenge, because the case was all fuzzy velvet on the inside.
It'll never slide out. Well, I don't know. I mean, I kind of hope once you get it up and running, you'll bring it to a post-quarantine cafe and do some hipster MIDI sequencing.
Yeah. Like, oh, you think you're hip there with your manual typewriter? Check this out.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for bringing that on, Todd. I love the look of that thing, and I am really going to encourage everyone to ask Todd to spend the energy on resurrecting this thing, because we all want to see it in action.
Well, you know, not many computers have a brightness knob on their front panel anymore.
Wow.
It's brightness, contrast, and volume. Yeah.
That's good if you're going to use it in bed, too. Excellent. All right. Thanks, Todd. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
All right. Next up, we've got Mark. I'm going to bring you on here. Hey, Mark, how are you?
Hi. I'm doing pretty good. Yourself?
Oh, very good. Thank you. What have you got for us today?
It's the project I've been working on a long time that actually I started with a lot of the parts at Christmas that I got from Adafruit. And you guys led me to fritzing, which led me to design my first PCB, which I just got a little while ago, which was challenging, but like actually receiving this in the mail and seeing something that I designed on a circuit board was pretty unreal.
Congrats, that's fantastic. That's really exciting.
And then what it's being used for is I had a feather and an old BME 280 sensor for weather. And I wanted to make my own portable weather station, which I have since managed to do. It's not in a very good case. It's a case for holding margarine for cooking. I managed to use the Adafruit components on this circuit board, hooked up to, actually, it was a SparkFun solar charger and a LiPo battery. And then it's all sending the data to Adafruit IO. So anytime I want, I can now see how warm it is on my deck. Warmer when it's in the sun and not.
Oh, that's excellent. So how is it sending? Is it how are you getting over to the Wi-Fi or Ethernet side of things with that?
It was a M0 Feather with the WinC 1500.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Very
it
cool.
just Wi-Fi to my router.
Uh-huh.
It works great to Adafruit IO. That saved me all sorts of time. At first, when I was doing this project, I thought, okay, now I've got the client, now I have to code a server. And just being able to take the code and hook it up made things so much easier.
Yes. Yeah, that's much easier than like MQTT and solving your own routing of that data.
Yeah, that was not something I was looking forward to. I did run into some firmware problems with the WinC for a while, which led me down the rabbit hole of drivers and realizing eventually you do find IO calls in assembly and drivers, which was an interesting learning experience. But it's been sitting outside for weeks now, running perfectly.
That's fantastic. So did you kind of weatherproof most of it inside of that container, or do you take it out in if it's raining?
It's somewhat weatherproof. It still has been snowing here on and off. So until it warmed up, and then I realized that the snow was melting into it, that became an issue. The next step is to actually get it into, I just got a 3D printer. So one of my first projects with that's going to be figuring out how to print a actual case. And I've actually got the wind gauge and direction gauge and rain gauge to hook up still.
Great. That sounds like a fun project. And congratulations on building and having your circuit board made. That's very exciting. Very cool to get that physical thing in the mail.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to see. It's like, wait, this is a circuit board that I designed. And
yeah, you feel so much like, wow, I really intimately know where every trace of this, like normally you kind of don't pay attention to that, but when you are holding the one in your hand that you were all up close in on Fritzing.
Yeah, it's all 5 traces or so, but still, this is the blank one I'm not using. I'm going to keep around for a long time, I'm sure.
Oh, that's exciting. Very cool. Great. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming by. We appreciate it. It was good to see you, and very cool to hear about your project, your weather project.
All right. Thanks for having me.
We're gonna we'll see you around next time. All right, and now we've got our very own Brent Rubel. Hey, Brent, how's it going over there?
I was working, and then you pinged everybody. I'm like, oh, I'm working on something, but it's not completed, but we'll show it off because I think it's cool.
That's great, yeah. We love a sneak peek.
Yeah. Show my desktop because it's super cluttered. You can see this, right? I'll move you away.
Bye.
You can see everything, right?
Yes.
Cool. So I'll expand I finally got my overhead camera set up again. So over here, I've been writing a little module for the FONA module. So like, this is a FONA breakout. It's a SIM 808 and has a little GPS on it, and it has a cellular SIM card on the back. And it's connected to a Metro M4. And I think it's like one of the last transports. We were talking about transports with the previous show and teller. So instead of using Wi-Fi, you can use cellular with CircuitPython. It's like one of the last ones. We'll show something more endearing. It's a cool like dog, nautical dog type coaster that I got the other week. I don't have a dog, but if I did, he'd be a nautical dog. Okay, so I'm still working on it, but we'll decrease the amount of lines of code. It's interesting to see like, so first we had the module which controls like all of the calls, and it says like, it writes over the UART and parses the replies back from the UART. It all communicates over a hardware UART interface. And then with CircuitPython, we abstract it even further. So on the right here, like still not complete, still working on it. We have a socket API that's identical, like one-to-one with the official Python socket interface. So we have this for each CircuitPython transport. So we have a socket now for cellular. we had a socket for Ethernet, and we have a socket for Wi-Fi. And then we go one step above that eventually. Like maybe next week I'll have a full demo to show off where we have like less lines. So it's like going down from like 100 lines to 50 lines, and maybe it'll be like 20 lines next week and more usable than its current state. So that's what I've been working on.
Very cool. So this is a 3G cellular connection is what that uses now?
Yeah, so it needs a modem with both 3G and GPS to do GPRS. GRPS? Yeah, GPRS, which is like the Global Packet Radio System. Somebody will definitely correct me if I'm wrong. But so that's only the FONA 808. Like, so if you want to test this, which will probably be tomorrow, I'll release like an alpha. It will only be for this FONA 808, and eventually we'll support the FONA 3G, and eventually we'll support more cellular devices. But like, this is the start.
That's excellent. Cool. Thank you. Thanks for letting me interrupt your work on this to have you show it.
No problem. Thanks for letting me show something that's not completed.
Sure thing. And also, we appreciate seeing your nautical dog coaster. All right. Well, we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye-bye. All right. That's all we've got for today. Thank you, everyone who stopped by. And we'll see you on the next show and tell, which is next Wednesday. And then we'll have which is the hour show and tell, and then we'll have this half-hour show and tell on Thursday. So thank you again so much, and we'll see you next time.